What is the soul in Jujutsu Kaisen, and why does having a better understanding of it make you more powerful? Let's talk about it. So first up, what is a soul in Jujutsu Kaisen? And conceptually, it is very similar to what we colloquially call a soul in the real world. That true kind of intangible essence of a person. Like everything that makes you you is your soul. However, this intangible concept from our world has been made manifest in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. There, it can be perceived, damaged, and even shaped. Most of these concepts are introduced to us by Mahito, the disaster curse born of humanity. So how fitting that that curse's ability is the ability to change and shape the soul. And as Mahito puts it, all emotions come from the soul. And it's far too simplistic to call it the heart, which is the term a lot of humans use. But that's because most people, unlike Mahito, can't see or perceive this thing at all. So of course they're just going to call it the heart. He says that I can see the soul, so for me, it's nothing special. It's practically the same as the human body. It just exists. So as he tells it, it's just a part of everyone, right? It isn't this intangible thing. It's just another piece of the machine. However, interestingly, even though he says it's nothing special, he obviously holds it in higher regard because he says that the body is built upon the soul and the soul should always exist before the body. He and Kenjaku also have a little bit of a philosophical debate between the soul and body that they ultimately come to the conclusion of their worldview is shaped by who they are. So Mahito thinks the way he does because he has this soul ability, and Kenjaku thinks the way he does because of the way his body interacts with his technique. JJK isn't afraid to get philosophical, and Gege specifically giving us character interactions discussing these things shows that it's an important part of the story he's telling. He doesn't draw a definitive line between what is the soul, what is the body, what is the mind. These are concepts that the characters are wrestling with. So because of that, there is no definitive answer. But even with that being the case, there are some things we definitively know about it. It can be perceived, damaged, and manipulated. Okay, so the soul can be perceived, but what does that mean and why can't everyone do it? Well, in order to perceive the soul, you have to have an awareness for it. And I don't just mean the intangible concept like we have in our world, but you need an actual awareness of what the literal soul is in JJK to be able to perceive it. Now, obviously, Mahito can do this because that's his whole thing, right? Idol transfiguration manipulates the soul, so he has to be able to perceive it in order to manipulate it. But how is somebody like Yuji or Sukuna perceiving the soul when they don't have abilities around that? Well, as we come to find out in the story, Yuji can perceive the contours of the soul due to his unique circumstance with Sukuna. Yuji's body houses two souls, and because of that, they have an awareness of one another. And due to that, Yuji can now perceive the soul in others as well. This is why Yuji is one of only a few people in the entire show that can actually hurt Mahito. Because to be able to hurt Mahito, you have to hurt his soul. And because Yuji possesses the ability to perceive souls, his attacks can target souls. We also know that there are cursed tools in JJK that have the ability to damage the soul, like the soul split katana here. However, interestingly, in order to damage the soul with this, its wielder needs the ability to perceive souls as well. And just as a point of clarity here, the damage that Yuji is doing to the soul, that the soul split katana is doing to the soul, and the damage that Mahito does to the soul may all be different. It's hard to say between Yuji and the soul split katana, we kind of need more information still, but with Mahito, it is fundamentally different, because what Mahito is doing with idol transfiguration is not damaging your soul, it's literally reshaping it. An analogy I like to give is that if you're a circle and you get the top half of your circle cut off, you could probably heal back to be a full circle, right? But if you're a circle that Mahito transforms into a square, you can't heal back into a circle because you're no longer a circle. Alright, y'all, so there's still a little bit more to say about souls that we know from the manga, but that's obviously going to be spoilery. So before we get to that, I want to answer a couple questions revolving around souls that are anime friendly still. And first up, we have this one from Quinn, which inspired this video, so thank you so much, Quinn. And he wanted to know, what exactly is the soul and why do you have more control over it when you understand it better? So hopefully the preceding video explained what the soul is, but as for why you have a better understanding and control of it the more you know about it, without, at the risk of, being really simplistic here, I think the relationship there is just the same as with anything, right? Like if I asked a stranger on the street to explain, astrophysics to me, unless they're an astrophysicist, they're not going to be much help, right? But if I go find a scientist who specialized in that, then because they have an awareness of astrophysics, they study it, they have a better understanding and therefore are going to be able to control things in that realm far better than I could. Does that make sense? A much dumber example would be like, you know how bodybuilders can like flex their pecs? I have pecs, but I can't do that, because I haven't trained those muscles. I don't have an understanding of that facet of my body, if that makes sense. So similarly, those that can perceive the soul will have a better understanding of it. So hopefully that makes sense. Next up, we got this question from Munch Crunch on how did Yuji still recognize Yuko, his classmate that showed up in the diner at the beginning of season 2? And Munch is wondering if at all that could have been because Yuji recognized her soul. And I think this is an awesome idea. I hadn't ever thought of that until actually Joe from Twitter. If you're on JJK Twitter, you'll know who I'm talking about. But she made a tweet pointing that out, and I loved that. I had never made that connection before. But my headcanon personally is just that even before sharing a body with Sukuna, I think Yuji was just the type of person to see someone's soul. Now, I don't mean literally in the way he now can thanks to Sukuna, but just in general, that's the type of person Yuji is. So thematically, I love that Gege then gives Yuji this literal ability. So yeah, I'm here for that. Next up, we got this question from Z, who asks, do I think Sukuna can attack the soul the same way that Yuji can? So again, because Yuji can perceive the soul, his punches can hit it, right? So can Sukuna do that too? And I think absolutely yes. We know Sukuna is in that same unique situation as Yuji, so any, insight Yuji gleans from that, Sukuna would too glean. Now, maybe Sukuna already knew how to do this. That's a discussion for another time. But absolutely yes, he can. Now, for your point as to why doesn't he do it more, I would argue that, who says he's not, right? Basically, anytime we see Sukuna fight somebody, he kills them. So who's to say, he's not doing soul damage with his strikes? And this also goes a little bit back to there could be a difference between soul damage in terms of a Yuji punch soul damage, the soul split katana soul damage, and absolutely Mahito's soul attacks, right? So, I mean, if Sukuna punches you, I think 100% he can do the same thing Yuji does, although there's more of a question mark there as far as would Sukuna's cleaves and dismantles similarly target the soul? And I think logically it would make sense that they could. And again, anyone that Sukuna has really fought in that way has died. So there's really no way to know if he is or isn't doing soul damage. But I would reckon that he probably is. And then, y'all, for this final question, I'm going to have to ask my anime onlys to get on out of here because we're going to have to go into some manga spoilers. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll catch y'all in the next one. But this last question comes to us from Daruno, who wants to know, could Yuji now perhaps heal Todo and Nobara from their Mahito idol transfiguration damage, since Yuji can perceive the soul, and we now know that people that can perceive the soul in this way can heal it with reverse curse technique. So this is something we found out in the latest chapter, because Sukuna has been struck with the soul split katana that has ruptured his heart and done soul damage, right? This has been a big question mark as to whether soul damage could be healed or not. Now we know that it can, as long as you are proficient enough with reverse curse technique and you know the outlines of your own soul. However, 2 points here. Is one, I don't know if Yuji has the capability to even reverse curse technique on other people, the same way Shoko and Akotsu can do. But let's just assume he can. I still don't think he would be able to heal Todo and Nobara because their soul damage, if you will, isn't really damage. It's just been changed. Because what happened to them was due to Mahito, due to idol transfiguration. So it's not the same as getting attacked by the soul split katana or getting attacked by Yuji's punch. Mahito literally changed their factory settings. So he can't heal beyond that. Any healing will just restore them to the factory settings, which in Todo's case is to have the amorphous blob of an arm that's going to explode. And in Nobara's case is to have the same thing happen to her face, right? Now, I could be wrong. We could find out that Mahito's idol transfiguration is damage, and maybe it could be healed, although I have my doubts. That's going to do it for this one, y'all. Thank you again so much for the support, and I will see you in the next one.